Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Savage Goose Show, where we talk about all things in Savage Worlds from the past week, or in this case, I guess a couple weeks since I was out last week. Sorry about that. I got a little sick. It's that time of year. Still feeling a little bit. So tonight we are going to be talking about several things. We're going to talk about, but mainly big topic is we're going to talk about how to make games scary, or I guess kind of more like what makes a game spooky, scary, what makes a game part of a horror genre. We're talking about kind of overall in all tabletop role playing games, but also then kind of diving into how we can do that inside Savage Worlds. And I want this to be a conversation. Please leave comments on your thoughts about how we can do this in Savage Worlds, how we can make games spooky in Savage Worlds. How games are already spooky in Savage Worlds, what lends itself to that as we kind of go through that topic. But while we are talking, we are going to go ahead and start though with some news. I am going to start trying to do things a little bit differently, just because I'm not sure. I decided I kind of really want to just go through the newsletter per se, but I'm going to kind of dissect it a little bit, actually kind of engage with it more, just kind of topics I'm actually interested in talking about, making sure that we can get through those things. But I do want to encourage you all to sign up for Pinnacle's newsletter yourself, so you can just read that newsletter right away. But we're going to go through that and some of the news from that, as well as some other news from around the web that I saw this past few weeks. So let's go ahead and I'll just kind of roll into the news. So the first piece of news is that the latest Savage Saturday Cinema, which is Phantoms of the Deep, is now available. You can go ahead and check that out over at Pinnacle's website. This is a series of one shots that Pinnacle's been releasing. Been very different genres. There's been a Deadlands like Weird West one. There's been a modern day like kids teens one. There was a ballerina one. There was one other one I can't remember the name of right now. And then there's this latest one, which is going to be Phantoms of the Deep. I say ballerina one. It's like a ballet. It's more like a kind of a Call of Cthulhu type esque one shot that I just ran, and that's actually going to be part of why we are going to be talking about this topic later today. So I have been enjoying seeing these. I haven't run too many of them, but I've only ran one of them not as recently. But I've enjoyed reading them, and they look pretty fun. So keep a look out for those. Next up is the spooky sale is going to be ending on November 1st. That's this week. So it's like, what's that? That's Friday. So Friday, November 1st is going to be your last day to do the spooky season sale over on Pinnacle's website. They're doing a 20% discount on Deadlands, East Texas University, Fear Agent, The Goon, Holler, Pine Box Middle School, Rippers, and the Horror Companion, as well as some Savage Tales of Horror Adventure Series and Weird Wars. There's a whole bunch of different stuff over there. All of it 20% off. I believe it's print and PDF copies. So if you're looking for one of these things already, might as well go and get it while you can get that 20% off, and then get it in your game. Charity bundle. There is currently a charity bundle called the Chuck Rice Medical Charity Bundle. This is for a man by the name of Chuck Rice, who is a contributor to East Texas University content. He has an issue basically going on with his heart that they're not entirely sure. From what I can read, they're not entirely sure what's wrong with his heart, but we're just looking for trying to do some GoFundMe and a charity bundle. In this charity bundle, there is a lot of Savage Worlds stuff. That's not only Savage Worlds stuff. There is other stuff as well, but some of that stuff includes the After Setting book, which actually I have over here. So it's not the physical book, but it is this is the physical book. But the PDF of this is in there. The Raiders of the Ghost Zone is in there, and East Texas University Study Abroad, which is a supplement for East Texas University for people who want to play their East Texas University games as if they're spending a semester abroad studying. So check that out. I haven't gotten around to reading this yet. I mean to. I have so many RPGs to read, and just try to get through them all. So check that out. Kickstarters. The Battlelords of the 23rd century, rather. Kickstarter is going on right now for their Charlie Foxtrot book. It ends this Thursday on October 31st. So if you're interested in getting that book for your Savage Battlelords games, go ahead and check that out. That is specifically for Savage Battlelords. There is, if you are interested in the normal Battlelords stuff, there is some bundles you can get there through that for normal Battlelords, but we're kind of highlighting the Savage Battlelords stuff. You can see my Battlelords stuff over there too. So yeah, go and check that out. Rifts Europa. This is the next book in the Savage Rifts series of games. If you're looking for the next supplement, I haven't gotten into Rifts a whole lot. I do have my deluxe edition Rift stuff here from the original Kickstarter way back when, but I never really got around to kind of getting into it. But if you are into it and you want to, like get some more goodies for it, the Europa Kickstarter is starting on Tuesday, November 12th. This is coming from Pinnacle, so look forward to that. All right, so the next thing I wanted to kind of go over is I'm going to start adding a new section where I'm going to start trying to highlight um, I'm going to call it third-party products, basically just ACE licensees and swag licensees who have really good. I was trying to highlight their content, some really good content that I've seen from them, and just kind of talk about it briefly and to highlight why I like it, why I think it's good, why you should get it, that kind of stuff. So the first thing what we're going to do this week, and then we'll kind of through the weeks, each week I'm trying to highlight a new one. Maybe highlighting some old ones that I've already gone over before, but trying to get to the ones that, and I'm going to focus on the ones I actually I've read or enjoy or think is really cool. I'm going to, I'm just going to highlight them just because it's a highlight. I'm going to try focusing on ones that I actually think have value, right? So the first one is one that you probably heard me talk a lot about over the years, it's been a year, over the past several live streams or lots of live streams. I've talked about them because I love these games, and that is the City Guard Chronicles. So I actually this week got a binder, a two-inch binder. I'm told that this should be enough binder for all the stuff, the City Guard Chronicles stuff coming out, but I gotta print it out a little cover here. And I'm going to put all of my printouts of the CDR Chronicles in this binder so I can have them, as well as the character sheets and everything. I have like another binder that I was using for a bunch of one-shots that I was like kind of collecting for Savage Worlds. And it's like, you know what? I think City Guard Chronicles needs its own binder. And the reason why I like it. So first, I'll say that this is a multi-swag award winner. So Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild award winner. It's won several awards for that. The reason I like it is these are just amazing one-shot adventures, and the concept is really fun. You're playing as city guards who are in some no-name town or some town, up to you what town it is, maybe depending on what setting you're in. It could be Neverwinter if you're Forgotten Realms. It could be Sharn if you're in Eberron. It could be Ankh-Morpork if you're in the Discworld series from Terry Pratchett. And also, that whenever I play this, I kind of imagine Ankh-Morpork, or at least the city guards from Ankh-Morpork more so than I think of anything else. But if you with the idea of being a city guard, there's a lot of these cool, really good adventures for this series. And they have, I'm trying to think like, right. The things I really like about them. The adventures are contained. They have very clear goals from the beginning. And there's multiple ways to kind of get to the end goal as well. Like as you investigate things, it's very clear that where you need to go next, or I should say, what areas, what leads, what paths you could go next from your current location to the next. In fact, as I kind of like here, I'm gonna go ahead and share my other screen real quick. See if I can get this. Present. Stop my screen share and present this other screen. There we go. All right, so when you see this is really well done. It's a really well made product, well laid out, well articulated, and this is a particular one. I'm going to go through too many of these things. Go over some rules, some things that the guards have, some even additional like edges if you want to play in this world. There's some additional edges for the city guards. There's even another in this particular, in each book, each adventure or the big adventures do have different character options. Not all of them have all the same ones. There are the setting rules that they recommend using if you're going to use, play in this world. But the reason that one of the things I like the most about this adventure and how the way they do things is these two pages here. You have here this one page, and I actually pull these pages out separate for when I play these games and run these games to use as reference. So the one on the left here is all of your cast for the adventure that you're running as a GM, and like all people just a quick reference like, okay, who is this person again? Who is the person from that? Okay, cool. There they are. Reference them. There we go. The other one is over here is like your acts. Like this, all these have like a 3-act structure essentially, and they make it very clear where you can go or where you likely will go from one section to the next section. So from scene 1, you're going to go to scene 2, and from scene 2, you could go to scene 3, 4, 5, 7, and from those, you might go to different areas. And it's very kind of like you can see like the patterns of where things are likely to go next before we get to the final act with the conclusion. I've ran 2 of these games so far, and both I ran the Case of the Missing Daughter and the what's the name of the other one? Case of Missing Daughter. So this one I have right here. Case of the Misguided Lover. Yes, that right here printed. And I ran both of those, and I had a lot of fun running those. It was just really easy to run. It felt smooth. It felt clear to the players what they're doing, and it also did a great job of invoking a lot of the mechanics of Savage Worlds. Right. So it was clear. There's incorporating like things like different mechanics like chases. They incorporate dramatic tasks, tests, social conflicts. All of these were for the most part available in both adventures that I ran. There might have been like one of those, maybe not in one of them. I think all of those were in both of them: dramatic tasks, social conflicts, chases, and then obviously combat as well. So you are getting like a very complete Savage Worlds package, and I would actually highly recommend these as good one shots to introduce players to Savage Worlds. People who haven't played Savage Worlds or can kind of get the idea, like, yeah, I'm a city guard. They're going to be kind of heroic, somewhat heroic, because they're part of the guard. They have an oath, and it's going to be clear on what they need to be doing and investigating. And it's going to be very, I don't know, it's very helpful, I think, to new players to kind of get their hands wet or feet wet, because that's the phrase, their feet wet when playing Savage Worlds. So I highly recommend these, and I love these. There's a link down below to the bundle, so you can get them all in a bundle, the one sheets and the adventures. Like I said, my plan is to print out all of them, put them in here with the character sheets. So if I ever want to run one, I can just grab this, ask the players, hey, what do you guys want to run? Which ones do you want to do? And just go from there. So again, highly recommend. And yeah, so next week we'll go over some other one, and we'll see. We can wait till next week to see what it is. So some other like either Ace licensee or Swag licensee we'll spotlight next week. All right. So main topic: what makes a game spooky? How do we add tension to our games? And so that kind of actually, first off, that first statement there of adding tension to our games kind of starts off the conversation, right? What does it mean to make a game spooky? Why do we make a game spooky? So we can talk about that a little bit, but also what does it mean for a game to be spooky? So I'm trying to resize some windows here. There we go. Okay. So the reason why, there's a lot of different reasons. The biggest 2 reasons I think is, one, for like one shots where we're trying to run a horror game and we're trying to make things a little scary and we're trying to invoke that feeling of dread and fear in our players. But just for the, maybe this is one shot, but maybe also there's gonna be times in the games where in like our normal regular games where we're going to try to invoke fear in our players, make them understand that there's something dangerous here or you're in trouble. And so we're going to kind of talk about that now. And when you're trying to make a game scary, the general thing that you need to start with is just kind of establishing the mood of the game. There's this thing, you can obviously set things like ambience, like getting the right music out, making it dark, which I have to say, be careful making it dark, because if you can't read your sheets or you can't read your dice, it actually takes away from the game. But making it dark somewhat, maybe using candles, those kind of things. I heard even people making their rooms colder just so that people, because somehow that invokes a little more sense of fear and dread and such. But what I really want to focus on, though, is how do we establish what makes a game scary or spooky from more of a mechanical perspective. And before we dive into Savage Worlds, I kind of want to talk about some games that add a level of tension in other ways. Most of these games are horror games, or they're games of tension and feel. And the number one that I think about when I think about a horror game or at least a horror one shot is this, as Dread. Dread is my favorite one shot system, probably. Like, I love Savage Worlds, but I love Dread. Now, Dread's just a one shot game. You're not really meant to play it, in a campaign. like it's really only designed to play. And here's why: the way the Dread works, you can see it's not very big, it's quite small. The way the Dread works is that there is a Jenga tower. So if you saw the thumbnail of this video, there's a Jenga tower, and there is no dice rolling. In fact, there is no stats numbers in this game. Your character sheet is actually a questionnaire, like a list of questions about your character, and a lot of them are very. When you look at this, a lot of the pre-generated characters, or a lot of these questionnaires are very both informative and asking questions. They kind of like they're very like I remember the correct word here, but they're very like they're uh, assuming questions. Like how did your sister die? Okay, cool. We established now that from that question that you have a sister and she died, and we're asking you, how did she die? And so there's a lot of questions like that. Usually they're about either one page, maybe front and back, and you're just answering these questions. That establish your character. There's a lot of assumptions in those characters, but you're also establishing some of your own details with the character. Which, by the way, I love as a concept in a sense because it means that players are adding their own feelings to their games, but they're also they're adding their own feelings to the games, but they're also having like set character archetypes that they are kind of being put into, without also adding their own characteristics and flaws and such. So that's really fun. So then when you play the game, the suggestion is to make it dark because you're not needing to read anything. Maybe the questionnaires are really for the game master to know kind of what things to play on the character when it comes to the adventure. And when you play the game, the idea is you have a Jenga tower, like we said, we established. And every time you want to do something, the GM is going to tell you to pull so many blocks. Maybe it's just one block for something simple, but maybe it's no blocks, but maybe you just do it. A lot of times there's going to be some things that you just do. But there's also going to be things where you're going to say you're going to have to pull this block, so many blocks, and the consequence of not pulling a block, if you say no, I'm not going to pull blocks, is you failed the task, whatever it is. But at the same time, the consequence though is the Jenga. The idea is you're trying to keep pulling blocks and put them back on top until the tower falls. When the tower falls, your character dies. And that's really why this is a one-shot system, right? Your character you're dead if this tower falls. If you're the reason the tower falls, you're dead. And the game is not nice about accidental things. It's like, no, if you cause it to death, if you knock the table, if you actually hit the table, bump the table, whatever, if you're the reason that it falls, your character is going to die. That's why this is a much more of a one-shot system, because you're going to go through some more character deaths. And in fact, it's expected usually that at least half the characters in the game will die, if not more. Now, there's some other cool mechanics and stuff, but that particular mechanic keeps people engaged. And one of the things that we're going to kind of pull up right now is the that Hamster Doom mentioned is one of the things I could do is to tell players that I need their buy-in and that the adventure is frightening and the characters feel overwhelmed. There is going to be some level of buy-in, right? Even for a game like Dread, there's a level of buy-in that like you don't want your characters to die. Because when your characters die, you're done, right? And so when it comes to other kind of games, well, there may not be one shots, even other things. There does need to be a level of buy-in from players to understand like there is X consequences, and you need to understand that your characters are scared. I get it. Maybe you're not scared. Maybe you're not actually fearful. I think Dread does kind of actually provoke some of those feelings of actual fear in players. But in other games, it's not as common. Maybe there's a less fear, and you kind of were saying like, look, we really need you to role play a sense, right? We need you to actually like engage with this, put yourself in the player's shoes and your character's shoes, and understand that there's a real problem that's actually happening here that your characters are having to struggle with. And so that it needs to be that level of buy-in. Now, the other game that I've seen people reference a lot recently, for good reasons, it's won like 4 Ennies recently. And it's a little bit of a horror game, but also more like a horror, a scary, dreading, more like OSR type esque 5e-esque game. And that's Shadow Dark. And the mechanic about Shadow Dark that kind of adds, one of the mechanics at least for Shadow Dark that adds in that element of fear and dread, is that their torches have a 1-hour timer. So when you light a torch, you have a 1 out of game, not in game, 1 out of game hour until that torch goes out. And for some people, that'll be like, okay, why is that scary? Well, so it's part of the reason it's scary is that in that game, none of your characters have dark vision. There is no way to see in the dark without a torch. There's no really any other way to cast light. If I wasn't aware of, it's like you have a torch, and then once the torch is out, you do not have light anymore, and you are going to die because the monsters in the dungeons are going to get you, and your characters will die. Right. So we have another buy-in of like your character is going to die if you do not succeed in X amount of time. And so there's another factor there of like, here's a way to invoke dread in players. A third game, and this game's not necessarily like a scary game, but it does have a element of creating tension. And that's a game that I played a couple times now called Dust City Outlaws. And in that game, there is an element in which when players do certain things, and in the game you play as criminals who are trying to usually perform some sort of heist or perform some sort of criminal activity, and you're doing like different scenes and trying to like establish like all of the things you're trying to do to prevent to accomplish your goal, right? And the way that they establish the tension is that whenever you do certain things, you're going to gain heat. You are going to have people kind of looking after you, like looking for you. They're going to be suspicious of you. The guard of the city, the police force, is going to start cracking down on you. And anytime you generate heat, your character does certain things. It generates heat, and it's kind of pre-established what's going to generate heat. Things that you need to do to play the game are going to generate heat, and then that heat can be spent by the game master to do certain actions and to bring calamities down upon your party, right? So there's like kind of give and take. Like you need to do things, you need to cause heat to happen, but the GM can use that heat against you. So we have a few things that different games are doing very different things to cause tension, but taking away with that. Hamster also mentions Chaosium's Cthulhu, so like Call of Cthulhu or any of the Cthulhu games. Also really good because it has the sanity system, and that's kind of, and for me, I think that's more of a theme thing. Like the sanity system kind of provokes some level of fear and such, because it's not just a worry fear about dying, just a fear of like losing your mind and then basically losing your character, not to death, but just to insanity. So there's a lot of, and I can't speak too much. I've played Call of Cthulhu a few times, but can't speak to too much to the feeling of insanity because it's only been a couple one shots, and I don't know how much that really played out in the games I played. But nevertheless, I do agree that Call of Cthulhu does have an element of that fear and tension. Unfortunately, can't speak too much to how it does it beyond the sanity system. So, those are the mechanics of these games that kind of cause tension. And it's like, okay, why do these things cause tension? Why does dread cause tension? What is it in essence that causes tension in this game? What is it in essence about Shadowdark that causes tension and causes problems? What is it about Dust City Outlaws that causes tension and problems? So, wait a second. Still getting over that cold. So what is it that causes tension in these games? So first off, for this one, I mean, for a lot of games, it's simply your character death. Your characters are in danger, and people hopefully have grown attached to their characters. There's that element again of buy-in where. Ooh. Sorry, right? There's that bill of buy-in that people care about their characters. Okay, that's hopefully true of all of our games. And there's dangerous opportunities really in every game because we are throwing monsters at our party. What about these ones that makes it sense? For Dread, I think it's that when it comes to Dread, when your character dies, it is not the luck of dice, right? There is a thing that's like you actually caused this. This is in essence your fault, right? You are the one in control of pulling the tower, and you're in the control of, yes, you're the one being forced to, but you're in control, and so it's going to be your fault if your character dies. Okay. In Shadow Dark, it's a little bit of a time element. Part of it's a counter, time element where you only have so much time before you need in real world time that can cause a tension, and you have so much time to do whatever it is that you need to do. A lot of times, people who want to cause tension, they'll get one of those little timers, right? And they'll turn it over, and characters say, "Okay, yeah, we only have this much time to until the hourglass runs out of sand to accomplish whatever our goal is." So that makes sense. Sorry. But it's also an element of resources. In Shadow Dark, I believe, and I could be wrong about this, you're only allowed to carry up to 3 torches. And so when it comes down to it, you only have, at best, individually as individual characters, 3 hours to accomplish your goal, right? Um, because if they only, and that's real world hours, right? So if a game lasts 4 hours, we have 3 hours, assuming that we can't trade off using who's using a torch. You have 3 hours to get everything accomplished that we need to before we're out of resources, and then our characters are going to perish. Right? It still seems it comes down to like, okay, our characters are going to perish if we don't do the right thing. There has to be a threat to the characters and a buy-in from the players that the characters are going to go away if they aren't careful with their resources. And yeah, and so on top of that, the other thing that causes fear in some games, and this is true for City Outlaws, is when the GM has resources. When you do something that gives the GM power over you, or power against you, maybe not over you, power against you. That sounds. The satanic panic people are like, no, 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 not over you, just against you. Yeah, let's go with that. They have power in some form to use against your party. And so one of the things that I'm even just talking about it, I'm noticing is that a lot of the times when it comes to creating fear, it's not when players don't have any opportunity to do something. It's when they are in control of their characters, and they need to make the right decisions to ensure their characters are safe. I think that's one of the biggest elements of fear in tension building itself. It's like, I need to make the right decision. I need to make sure that I don't make a mistake. I need to have hope that I don't do something wrong, or I'm going to succeed X roles to make sure that I didn't waste X things, right? And so those are some of those factors there. The other thing that kind of causes fear, though, is also just unknown consequences. Uh, when we do things like like I said, the Dusty Outlaws, when spending heat, you don't know what the GM is going to use that for. You don't know what's going to happen later. So especially there's a big unknown that's happening down the road that you're going to face, or you're facing even at the moment. Not knowing what you're facing also kind of causes that tension. I think the reason why big unknown consequences cause tension is because they don't know, as players, what to do, because it's unknown. It's an unknown quantity. They don't necessarily know what they need to do to make sure their characters are safe and protected and accomplish their mission. So that's some things to think about. And so when it comes to running a game, how do we kind of make sure that a game, either one shot or campaign, has those elements of fear in Savage Worlds? Now, there is some really good advice. Where'd it go? Here it is. There's some really good advice in the end of the horror companion, in the appendix, I believe it's appendix A, on running horror games. And we're going to go over a little bit of that, but I'm also going to go over some like setting rules and such, and kind of talk about those a little bit further. Well, something right here. There it is. So the first thing is we have to make sure we set the game tone correctly, right? And I don't just mean that setting the tone correctly as far as like ambience and such, but also just making sure that, again, the players understand buy-in. This game is a horror game. You're expected to understand that your characters are going to be rushing into these problems where they are going to be scared. They're not going to be just logically, they'll logic their way out of it. I have a one player particularly that I think tends to do that, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna ignore this like that. It kind of logs the way out. Like, no, you need to. The player, your character, is terrified. Um, there is something going on within them that is scared of this thing. Even if you succeed your fear rolls, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. Even if you succeed your fear rolls, you can still be scared of this thing. You may not have to have a flight response or a fight response immediately, but you can still be scared of this thing as a normal character who does not run into these things, whatever it is, very often, whether it be a Cthulhu monster or a vampire, or so I say the Cthulhu one, a Lovecraftian horror, an elder being. There we go. That sounds like a nerd. I don't know. So whether it be a mummy, a vampire, a eldritch being, a zombie, or whatever kind of thing it is, we can still pretend to be scared of things. We can still, we have that buy-in of like understand, like, yeah, we know this is terrifying, but we also want to make sure we are providing a reason for our players to be terrified of these things, right? And to put it in the right way. So game tone, that's going to be an important thing. One thing else we can do to kind of is just say, hey, look, this is a horror game. You're going to be scared of these things. We're going to be playing a little bit dark and grittier. We're going to have a little bit ambient. Those kind of things. Perfect. The other thing, though, that we are going to want to try, one of the other things we can also do to try and help with that is also do what the horror companion says is show, not tell. And what they mean by that is describing things without saying what they are. And I think that's good advice for almost any tabletop role playing game. Try to describe the monsters. It makes it much more immersive than just like, okay, 3 goblins attack, or hey, okay, 3 vampires attack. Making things a little more immersive by giving descriptions. This creature approaches you with long fangs dripping with blood, its claws extended, and its neck has marks on its side. Something like that. I'm not the best at it. It does take a lot of practice, and I'm just not as much as I need to be. That's one of the things I'm trying to get better at in my own games, is being more descriptive and immersive with my descriptions, and try to think about more how the monster looks and how they act. So I'm not perfect there yet. I'm not there yet either entirely, but that's one of the things that we can think about. When it comes to, there's a lot of other good advice in the book, but I also want to talk about just kind of more mechanically, right? How can we do this in Savage Worlds mechanically? This is the game I ran this past week. This is The Right to Spring of Madness. It's the last Savage Saturday Cinema. And I think there's some good advice in here about making some games, adding some tension. One is calling for rolls without needing to. And we don't want to make players roll for no reason, right? We want to make sure they are rolling for things. We want to make sure they are getting a chance to kind of partake in the story. But we also want to kind of catch them by surprise. And so one of the suggestions here is to call for notice rolls and then jot down the success or failures, and then give some sort of narration that makes it kind of explains away that particular role, but then using those roles for success and failure later when it comes to other things that maybe are a little more important. One of the other things that it talks as well is, sorry, excuse me. Is it kind of also invokes that, like, yeah, describe strange noises, describe random things, describe things. Don't just say this is what's happening. Describe the environment, not just giving it. Now, there's also a lot of setting rules, though, that kind of help with creating a game that is going to be more spooky. A lot of them are coming from the horror companion, right? So that's kind of what its job is to be the horror companion, to try to give a sense of horror. But at least when it comes to my sense of horror, I'm not looking for games that are going to do, like, some people, when it comes to description, by the way, people like the idea of like describing like blood and guts and stuff. And to some level, I'm okay with it, but I don't try to get too detailed in it because that's just not my particular style. I rather go for the kind of tension with other kinds of things. So the setting real quick for this. Sorry. I think the most important setting rule when it comes to playing Savage Worlds horror games is the playing to the tropes setting rule, which basically says, hey, look, players, we know that you are smarter than everybody in these horror stories. They're smarter than the teens in I don't even watch horror movies, so this is not very good for me. Like Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger and all those other kind of movies. Nightmare on Elm Street, I think is what it's called. Maybe yeah, we got it. You're smarter than the investigators in Call of Cthulhu stories and all that. Okay, play to it anyways, and that's what we're going to reward you for. I'm going to give you bennies for playing to the tropes, for doing things that you think you shouldn't do, but you're going to do anyway. Okay, here's Spanish for that. And that's one of the most important setting rules for that because it helps get that player buy-in. It's like, yes, we are going to partake in this thing. We are going to act more as the characters really should be in these more horror settings, and we're going to reward you for it with bennies. The other one that I thought was really helpful, and I didn't like the setting rule generally before, but I kind of get it for horror games, and that is the hard choices setting rule. The hard choices setting rule says that you as a GM do not get bennies at the start of the game. You only get bennies when your players spend bennies. And that kind of adds in that tension to your players. The players have just failed a roll, right? They failed their roll. They want to try again because they feel this is an important roll. Maybe it's a bigger roll to not take a wound, or maybe it's a fear roll to not be, perhaps a roll in the fear effects table or something like that. And they want to, do I want to spend a penny on this? Well, they have to think like, okay, well, if I do spend a penny on this, the GM is going to get that penny, and then they now have this extra piece of power to use against me. And that's kind of very similar in my mind to like the heat system from Dust of the Outlaws, where it's kind of providing that tension, like, oh, if I do this, I am giving the GM more power, more fuel to use against the party. And I don't want to say that like we're looking at games to be GM versus players. It's not necessarily the mentality, but we are trying to usually in horror games we are trying to give them a sense of difficulty for the sake of the narrative and the story. We're doing this together. While it looks and feels against each other, we're doing this together. So the hard choices setting rules are really good for one for that. The other setting rule I thought was there's a few other ones, a lot of other ones here. But one of the few other ones here that I thought helped kind of evoke the general sense of fear. One was wild cards, which basically says like when you have swarms of things, yeah, cool. Just let them be extras, right? But if you have one zombie, right? If you want to actually give that one zombie a feeling of a threat, just make it into a wild card. Now it's got 3 wounds. It's got its own bennies. It's going to attack you. And you can basically make one-off monsters that are all by themselves still feel scary and make it so that players actually have to be worried about it doing something to you. And then there's 2 other ones that kind of go together. And I think these rules are good for causing fear because it invokes the idea that it kind of reinvigorates and makes stronger the idea that your characters are fragile beings. The first one is difficult healing, which says that you can't heal after so long, and you only get one chance to heal certain wounds. The other setting rule is gritty damage, which says that every time you take a wound, you also get an injury. So it's not you don't wait till the end until you're incapacitated to get your injuries. You get injuries for every wound, and you keep those injuries until that's healed. I think those 2 setting rules are really good for kind of helping kind of make your characters and your players still be wild cards, still can do cool things, can still have a little bit of action, but still be fragile as well against certain things. Making it so that they have to realize at some point, like, at least in like the game I ran the other day, what came with this, they did do a bunch of combat, and in the end, I'll talk about the end later. But they ended up doing a bunch of combat, which did wound them pretty significantly, and it caused them, I think, really to kind of not succeed in the end. They actually did not succeed in this particular mission, and a lot of that was because of the wounds they had taken already. There were some significantly bad wounds that they had to fight against in their final mission. And it's going to reinvoke the idea that your players are fragile, they're scary, and sometimes I think that really what should happen a lot of times is that some of these monsters they probably shouldn't have fought. They probably should have just ran away from them. And so we need to also make sure we're invoking that kind of mentality of like sometimes things are not worth fighting. You just need to get out of there, and making those moments more interesting. So thinking about if you're in a zombie post-apocalypse zombie game and there's a bunch of zombies coming down, you're not going to you're not going to fight off all the zombies. No, what you're rather going to likely be going to be doing is you're going to be either doing some dramatic task to get away or doing a chase. And we're going to use those mechanics of the game to kind of get away with consequences that might be really severe, like you dying or your NPC dying, and kind of invoking that kind of possibility of something really bad happening, like character death. Because in the end, when you really think about it, the character death is or character removal, I should say, when it comes to like insanity and stuff. Character removal is the scary thing that's going to happen to a player. Either character removal by player character or character removal of NPC character. I mean, hopefully, those characters that we're moving from that are NPCs are ones that the players care about and don't want to see go, and that kind of stuff. But I think the ultimate one is going to be the opposite player character. And then the last thing I kind of want to evoke when it comes to like fear is things like dramatic tasks is something that I think causes that kind of tension. The fact that if we do not succeed at this task, we will fail. And usually when those kind of things happen, there's something extremely horrible that's going to happen. In a couple games I ran, both this one and I'm not give too many spoilers, but this one and another one that I've ran for another game, the dramatic task at the end was stopping some sort of ritual. And if you don't stop it, the big bad guy from the other dimension comes in and destroys the world, or something like that. And so, or it could just be something more simple, like saving yourself from the monsters, or making it into a chase and something like that. So I think those kind of systems where you are rolling and you're trying to succeed in things, and you're not sure if you're going to get there. The closer we can make it so that's not a super easy task, the closer that we can get to a almost failure but still succeeding, really adds into that tension. Ideally, I think that's why I even in all my games, not just in horror games, that's what I kind of strive for when trying to create tension, is where there's an actual challenge or there's a possibility you might not succeed, but you still do. Especially with dramatic tasks, even in combats, if we want to make that same kind of thing. All right, so kind of reiterate what causes fear. I think in the end, first, you need to make sure you have player buy-in. Players need to be invested into the game to really be made fearful. If you're not invested, you're not going to be scared or have that tension. You're not going to, nothing's going to really bother you. You're not going to be experiencing that fear. Two, we need to, in a sense, threaten the characters. Either threaten them by by failure, by resources. And actually, one thing that I kind of, as I was about playing the plan, I did want to mention, there's a lot of cool things that we can do with resources. I've seen some other ideas of like actually using physical beads and stuff to represent resources. In the Assyrian hybrid from Pear Tree Studio, there is a system in that one for resource management that really adds actually I think a lot of tension. Like every once in a while you roll and there's resources are lost, and when you run out of resources, you fail the mission, right? So I think highly recommend if you're looking for some sort of resource management system to create that tension, highly recommend looking at that one. I can put a look at that link in the description below later. But we're going to try to challenge the players that way. We want to try to so resources, GM power, creating some sort of big unknown consequences. And time. Time is going to be a big factor too. So think about those things as options that we can do in our games. Not seeing a whole lot of things in the chat tonight. I see a lot of things from Hamster Doom. So thanks, Hamster, or Mr. Doom, for all of your contributions. I would love to hear some of your ideas on how to do this. I plan on kind of taking some of this content and making it into a full video at some point. I think that's kind of what I've mostly been doing lately with these kind of topics, is kind of talking about them with you guys, hearing your thoughts, and then taking what I've come up with and ideas I hear from you all, and put them into a more fleshed out video for other people to consume and hopefully use it in their games. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you all coming and hanging out. And I hope you all have a great spooky month as we kind of end it. Have a great Halloween. And that Halloween trick-or-treating is 31st. So it's coming up. So if you haven't bought your candy yet for the kiddos, make sure you do it. It's time to rush. As Jim says, make them rush. Rushing makes tension. So the more rushing you have, the better that's going to be. Cheers, everybody, and enjoy your week.